Welcome. I spent decades as a city detective, where every case had a logical solution. My world was built on cold, hard facts, not ghosts or curses. Now retired, I am taking on a new kind of case, the ones people blame on the paranormal. They see phantoms, but I look for facts, because where others see the supernatural, I always find a truth far more chilling. This particular case began when the call came from a small, weather-beaten coastal town known as Blackwater Bay, a place defined by its jagged coastline and the merciless sea. The local police chief, a man named Miller with the worn-out eyes of someone who'd seen too many storms, was at his wit-ass end. "Detective," he said, his voice a low, gravelly whisper, "We've got a killer out here, but folks are saying it as a ghost." The legend was an old one, a tale passed down through generations of fishermen and sailors. Years ago, a lighthouse keeper named Silas, a man notorious for his cruelty and bitterness, was said to have met his end in a fierce storm. His body never recovered. The community believed his vengeful spirit now haunted the bay, his furious soul forever seeking to pull unsuspecting ships down to their doom. The old lighthouse, a long-abandoned skeleton of stone and iron, stood on a treacherous outcropping of rock a few miles offshore, its beacon long since extinguished. Its silence was a stark, menacing landmark, but recently, the silence was broken. Reports from local fishermen, pleasure boaters, and even larger commercial vessels had been pouring in. In the dead of night, especially during the heavy fog that frequently blanketed the bay, a new light would appear. A powerful, brilliant beam of light, seemingly emanating from the old, derelict lighthouse, would cut through the gloom. It wasn't just a simple light. Witnesses swore it was a ghostly, pulsating beacon with a peculiar, erratic rhythm that was subtly off from the traditional signal patterns of a working lighthouse. The first few times, the community believed it was a good sign, a miracle, a new guardian watching over the treacherous waters. That hope turned to terror when a series of disasters struck. 3 fishing trawlers and a luxury yacht were found wrecked on the notorious jagged rocks near the lighthouse. The wrecks were total, splintered wood and torn metal scattered across the unforgiving shore. More horrifying still, the bodies of the sailors were found, not drowned, but bearing signs of being dealt with after the crash. A single, brutal, and swift injury. This was not the work of the sea. This was murder, and the local townsfolk, with fear now a living, breathing thing in their hearts, knew exactly who to blame. Silas, the ghost keeper. Returning to exact his terrible revenge, the legend had become a terrifying reality. I drove out there, leaving the logical order of the city for a place steeped in irrational fear, where the line between myth and murder had been drawn in blood. The air was thick with desperation and the scent of salt and decay. I listened to Chief Miller's account, to the terrified, whispered anecdotes of the fishermen who had barely escaped the so-called ghost light. I heard their stories of the killer lighthouse, but I wasn't looking for spirits. I was looking for a pattern and a motive, because a ghost doesn't commit acts of murder to hide its tracks. My investigation began not at the lighthouse, but at the crime scenes. I examined the wreckage of the boats on the shore. Each wreck was total, deliberately guided into the sharpest, most destructive part of the rocks. The murder of the crew members was a secondary act, an unnecessary piece of cruelty if the sea itself was the killer. The bodies were found in the water, but their injuries, as the medical examiner later confirmed, were inflicted with a blunt force object, not from the crash. This was a cover-up. Someone was using the shipwrecks as a smoke screen for murder. I also scrutinized the reports of the Phantom Lighthouse. I noticed something curious in the witnesses' accounts. The light's appearance was never random. It only appeared on nights of thick fog, and it always seemed to have a subtle but distinct, deliberate rhythm. A ghost's light would be ethereal, chaotic. This one was controlled. I also learned that the wrecks had a specific commonality. They all occurred during periods of intense fog, on nights when the victims' ships were carrying a particularly valuable cargo. The fishing boats, for example, were carrying a rare, high-value breed of fish. The yacht was carrying a rich industrialist and his wife, known to wear priceless jewelry. This was not a spirit of vengeance. This was an act of calculated greed. I brought in a team of specialists from the mainland: engineers, forensic analysts, and experts in maritime technology. We set up an observation post on a nearby headland, waiting for the fog to roll in. When it did, as if on cue, a powerful, pulsating beam of light appeared from the old lighthouse. It was hypnotic, mesmerizing, and utterly convincing, but as my team used specialized instruments to analyze the light, the truth began to emerge. The light wasn't coming from the lighthouse itself. It was coming from the water. Here's how it went down. Plain as day. A gang of smugglers and looters had identified the bay as a perfect staging ground for their illicit operations. The old lighthouse provided a perfect piece of local lore to exploit, and the fog provided a natural curtain for their crimes. The motive wasn't a ghostly vengeance. It was the immensely profitable illegal trade of plundered goods and high-value cargo. They were using the terror of the Phantom Lighthouse to keep prying eyes away, while they committed their crimes in plain sight. The murderers had spent months, maybe even years, meticulously crafting their deception. They weren't using a simple lamp. They were using a powerful, underwater holographic projector and a high-intensity laser system mounted on a small, submersible boat disguised as just another fishing vessel. This technology, wirelessly controlled, allowed them to create a perfect, three-dimensional projection of a lighthouse beam, which would appear to emanate from the old, derelict structure. The light's subtle, erratic rhythm was a deliberate choice, designed to be just off from a real lighthouse as signal, which would confuse sailors in the fog, causing them to head directly for the treacherous rocks. The pulsating nature of the light was a side effect of the low-frequency lasers used to create the image. The wrecks were not a curse. They were the result of the sailors, disoriented by the fake light, crashing their boats into the rocks. The victims weren't killed by the sea. They were murdered by the looters. As soon as a vessel crashed, the smugglers would swiftly move in. They would salvage the most valuable cargo and murder any survivors to ensure there were no witnesses. They would then use the legend of Silas and his ghost ship to explain the wrecks and the deaths, knowing the superstitious locals would never look for a human culprit. The murder of the crew was a chillingly practical solution to a potential problem: the witnesses. My team and I, with the help of the local police, used our own boats to confront the smugglers. We found them hiding out in a secluded cove, their submersible projector system and their stash of stolen goods and cash hidden on their vessel. They confessed, their stories chillingly revealing the cold, cynical logic of their crimes. They had turned a beloved local legend into a weapon, using a ghost story as the perfect cover for a calculated, brutal series of murders and robberies. No ghost. Just a group of men, consumed by greed, and a very good projector. So, there you have it. No evil spirits, no curses. Just a chilling case of human vengeance. This one showed me how easily a person can turn another's belief into a weapon. They want you to blame a ghost because the truth, a man consumed by a grudge, is far more terrifying. This case proved that the most dangerous monsters aren't paranormal, but human. Stay sharp.